Okay. So, Dims, thank you for joining us. Um, we have a new member here, David. Andrew, I thought you might not be able to make it today. Or did you say, oh,
I
you
said I
said,
wasn't able to work on the proposal.
oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. But we'll have it for SIGARC, right?
Yeah, we can talk about it near the end of the meeting.
Okay. Okay, so let me pull up the agenda. Does anyone want to bring up anything on their mind before I actually start looking at the agenda?
I just wanted to report some good progress we had on our side on the cloud provider OpenStack repository.
Yes, please do.
So we are up and running. We have the code imported. We have a couple of CI jobs running, and we have been able to bootstrap a few people to become reviewers and approvers. There is a little bit of chaos that I'll talk about later in terms of who can LGTM and things like that. But and I also set up a vanity URL thingy, kates.io/cloud provider AWS Azure OpenStack. So I set those up so the other repositories have it ready. I haven't seen anybody else asking for help with any of these things. So I'm assuming that once people actually get around to doing stuff, I don't know if GCP folks have started yet.
No, we haven't. We got to figure out how we're going to coordinate amongst our teams.
Okay.
Yeah. It's blocked on me, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, I think we may be ahead of the curve on this. We were itching to get this running.
Right. Yeah.
So do we have more progress on the end-to-end tests?
Not yet. So we have the local up cluster conformance test. It's working fine except for one failure. And the same conformance test I want to run against OpenStack. That bit is left. But I have the CI job ready. All we need to do is be able to run kube tests somewhere else other than our CI system, which is where currently the hiccup is. We are trying to do this in OpenLab, and we are waiting on a GitHub app to be added to the OpenStack repository to be able to kick off the job there.
Okay. So the GitHub app is called OpenLab?
Yes.
Okay. To the OpenStack repository.
Yes. I have a issue open against testinfra for that.
Okay.
Is that?
Okay, great. Okay, so once that is done, how do we go from there to end-to-end tests for the generic CCM?
Right. So at least we'll have a template ready at that point, which is essentially we are bringing up a single node cluster using local up cluster, and that can either use the CCM directly or it can use the custom binary that you can use instead of CCM. So we'll have a template ready. So other people will have to figure out a way to run this. I guess it's not too much of a problem for GCP and Azure and other places because all we need is a URL and credentials to talk to the respective cloud endpoints. Mm-hmm. It was a problem for us in OpenStack because we have to go against different OpenStack implementations and versions and things like that. Okay. So yeah, so I can share how to set up the local up cluster. There's like four environment variables. That's all it takes to set it up. And using kubetest E2E, you can run anything you want. So the first suggestion would be to run the conformance test to make sure that nothing breaks when your provider is switched on. And then the next step is to actually figure out a subset of the end-to-end test to see which ones actually make calls to the cloud provider API. So we have like a subset of tests saying, if you are making any changes, then run these set of tests to make sure that the existing scenarios don't break.
Okay.
So that would be the next step. But it's a couple of steps to get there.
Okay. So from a previous discussion, I remember Chris Hodge and Dims, I think you were also involved in doing this. So can I safely, just note down that the two of you are actually driving it right now?
Yeah, I'll take it as far as the conformance test and showing people how to run the conformance test with your own provider using local app cluster. Me and Chris can sign up for that.
Yeah,
Chris.
I'm working on that right now. I have, I don't know if you can hear my machines running in the background. I'm I'm running code to do the local app cluster tests.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, so we'll get to that point, but then I think Yasin, I believe her name is, she was interested in helping with the figuring out adding tags to E2E tests to say which ones need like a feature cloud provider or feature CPM tag, trying to identify those tests. So that would be the next step. I don't want to sign up for that yet.
Okay, no problem. I can get in touch with Yasin. I've been speaking with him before. Well, thank you, Dims. Thank you for that update. One of the things I wanted to kind of go over was I think we have a new member today, and I got pinged this week about how to add a new cloud provider into Kubernetes by different people, and I've asked them to join our chat or join our meetup. So I know Andrew from DigitalOcean is actually working on a proposal for what are the minimum requirements to qualify as a Kubernetes cloud provider CCM and actually exist in the org. So Andrew, do you want to share some of your thoughts? I know the proposal isn't ready, but if you have any initial thoughts, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and Caleb, feel free to chime in whenever. But essentially, what I'm gonna be working on the next couple of weeks is to add to our current proposal or create a new one, where the working group can kind of have full autonomy on what cloud providers we think should have a community-owned repo for Kubernetes. And so that could either look like the working group itself chooses or kind of has a set of requirements that if they're satisfied, we can kind of create that repo for them. And if the working group can't, then we're looking into the process of promoting the working group into a SIG so that we can kind of facilitate that for new cloud providers. So I don't have a solid list for what those requirements are going to look like, but I think the best steps going forward is I'll come up with a list that I think is reasonable. I'll open a PR, and then we can just have whoever wants to take a look, review it, and then we can solidify the list from there.
Andrew, I have a question. How is that relates to separating out of tree cloud providers? There has been a major work for at least a year now around external cloud providers and out of tree for all the reasons around accelerating the changes, not being in the same release cadence as Kubernetes and all of that. How is that relates to this?
So working groups can't own code. So in order to pull in cloud providers that don't already exist or that didn't already exist in Tree, we need some governing body for them. Given that DigitalOcean and VMware are both in this position of, well, one VMware is already in Tree but has no governing structure. There's no SIG associated with it, and DigitalOcean has the same, is both not in Tree and has no governing body for it. We need some larger body to potentially own all of these cloud providers, since it doesn't make sense to have SIGs for each of these providers and for every new provider that you could conceive of. So this is allowing us to have the governance structure in the Kubernetes project to give thumbs up or thumbs down to new providers, at least living inside of a CNCF owned GitHub organization.
All right.
Yeah, there's absolutely no requirement that you have to create a repo in the Kubernetes org. Like you can still have an external cloud provider outside, but it's kind of a nice opt-in. Like if you want a community-owned repo, then it's kind of a nice thing to have.
True. I guess the second question, part of the question is, the out of tree provider is depending on interfaces that are not there yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, I might be mistaken. What's happening there? I'm just trying to understand. Like everybody got excited a while back about external out of tree providers and then nothing. So
What do you mean?
Yeah.
then,
I mean, we're
can I run out of tree providers today on 110?
yes.
The repo is an organizational structure that we're trying to push for to make it easier for discovery and how we're managing all the different kind of plugins and stuff we're going to be adding.
Khaled, essentially the cloud provider interface that is there right now is frozen. The only change that happened was adding the context parameter. Other than that, nothing else has happened.
Right.
And so basically we are telling people that this is what is going to be there, and you can write controllers for anything else you want, right? So there is, we are not going to do any gRPC kind of stuff that CSI is doing or device plugins are doing. We are not going to do anything like that. So it's just going to be whatever you want, you write a controller for it, and go on. So we are not going to change the existing interface. The only thing I can think of is when CSI goes GA, then we can remove more stuff from the cloud provider interface. That's the only thing I can think of at this point.
Yeah, and we're like, so kind of sidetracking a little bit, like we may deprecate something like external ID that we might talk about later, but nothing that would like break compatibility for people to actually run cloud.
All right.
Yeah, does it answer your question, Khaled?
I might lack a piece of information for how can I run external cloud provider.
Yeah, feel free to ping me later. And
I just need a doc. All right.
We have a doc. We have a bunch of docs already.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly setting there's a parameter where you set cloud provider to be. I don't know if the exact value is, but you say it's external, and then you give it the provider that you want to run, and the provider will do its magic to load in its cloud file and everything else.
All right. Okay.
In it's already there in kubernetes.io/docs.
All right, so it's on me. That part is on me. I'll figure it out. Right, okay. I might be pinging you later on for questions.
Yeah, just ask us. There's like two binaries that you can run. You can have your own custom binary, or you can run the CCM binary. And then each of these binaries you can run as a pod or a daemon set.
Yeah,
and that's about it. There's no more magic to it than that.
Yeah, but the cloud provider is also used by kubelet.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's all been architected carefully. So first of all, from kubelet, from kube API server, from kube scheduler, and also kube controller manager, we extracted all of the parts out. For instance, in kube API server, there was an admission controller that labeled volumes with their respective zones, the availability zones, because volumes cannot move between availability zones on AWS and GCE. So that was moved as a controller into the CCM, and Rob Ratty, who's actually here on the call today, did that. And then similar to that, on the kubelet actually gets the initial set of information about the node that it's running on. For instance, the node name, instance ID, and then the node addresses. That was also moved into a controller called the cloud node controller. So all of this has been moved out of tree already, and CCM is the out of tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So in the kubelet itself, we end up specifying -- cloud provider equals external. And then we run the external cloud provider. And to coordinate that bring up, there is a taint called, external cloud. I forgot the name of the taint.
That's fine. That's fine.
There is a taint. Yeah. But it's all magic.
I wouldn't want to use more of your time, guys. Thank you. I will look at the docs.
Yeah, well, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it answers my question. And being I might have questions, but I'll figure out how to reach you.
Yeah, just ask on Slack. We are very responsive.
So there's actually an architectural consideration that I think we're missing,
which is
to go with beta. But before I get to that, I do want to clarify the discussion we're having earlier. So is everyone okay with me just coming up with like a list of requirements that I think is okay, and we can kind of solidify the list in a PR going forward?
Yeah, there's I have a PR up and running for working group cloud provider that lists the requirements, and so I think that adding on to that repository, and let me find the pull request.
It's 1942.
Yeah, 1942. Oh, more stuff is merged today. I only have that one open.
Cool. So we'll get all the currently open reviewed.
Yeah, and Caleb, I think put some comments in there about not being, I need to update the pull request to take into account that comment. But that's kind of the place where we're going to be working against, I suppose, for the requirements with that existing document. So that's one place for people to go and check it out. So you can see kind of the requirements we're setting up there of what we want the repositories to look like. There's a general structure. I don't know if this is on the agenda, but there's also, I've been talking with SIGDocs about how they would be able to consume these repositories to automatically generate docs for the Kubernetes docs website.
Awesome.
That'd be nice. Cool. So yeah, I guess yeah, I'll look at the PRs and we'll try to get those merged, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, there was one thing I wanted to bring up with the kubelet that I think is blocking beta. So I don't think we consider the case where if you have an existing cluster, like if it's already running on an existing cloud provider and you want to migrate the cluster out, it would mean that you'd have to delete the node and then rerun it with the cloud provider set. Otherwise, like we wouldn't go through the initialization loop of the Cloud Controller Manager setting the new node status for the new kubelets. Has anyone done any testing on that or know how to work around that at all? Because we're under the assumption that people are running or creating new clusters when they add Cloud Controller Manager. That's out of tree.
Wait, I didn't quite get that. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sure. So when we designed Cloud Controller Manager, we kind of had the assumption that this is going to be running on a new cluster. So a kubelet runs and you set cloud provider external, and then it creates like an annotation for itself, and then, it creates a taint, and then we check for the taint, and we kind of assume that this node isn't running any pods, right?
I mean, are you talking about the upgrade path?
Yeah. So if I want to run a current, if I have a cluster in production and I want to move it into out of tree provider, how do I work around nodes? Like if I taint the node and I essentially have to delete the pods there and then kind of have to shuffle pods around to get the kubelet configured correctly?
No, the kubelet already has an IP address, and if it doesn't have the taint, we just start listening for IP address changes. The upgrade path has already been documented and considered.
Okay, what about clusters that aren't part of the cloud provider and we want to add an out of tree provider? So DigitalOcean would be an example.
Got it. That has, okay, we need to think about it. So, so how does it run today? Is there a controller that actually does these operations today? Like checking for node IP address changes or creating load balancers. Is there something that exists today in DigitalOcean, or do you run it with cloud provider none today?
Well, if you wanted those things, you'd have to run the current out of tree cloud provider, the Cloud Controller Manager. But if I wanted to enable it on an existing cluster, I'm worried that you'd have to taint the node, right? Like you'd have to restart the kubelet. But then if you don't delete the node off the API server, then you don't get the taint. And if you don't get the taint, then you don't get the node status populated, right?
Well, the node status will just start getting synchronized. During the first so if the taint exists, what it does is it looks for the instance ID, sets the external ID, gets the node metadata like what region it is in and what its size is, like the instance type and the instance region zone, I think, and then starts the node status update loop. So if it doesn't have the taint, it just does the node status update loop.
Right, but then you need to register the node to get the taint, is what I'm saying. And like, if you're upgrading an existing cluster, the node is already registered. So like, what does the process look like to get the taint properly set? So
you don't need the taint to start the node status loop. That's what I'm saying. If the node exists, it's going to.
Okay. What about like setting the zone ID, the external ID, all that stuff?
Yeah, that's something we have to look into. We don't have that for a cluster that didn't have any cloud provider to moving to the CCM model. We don't have a mechanism to get that instance type, zone ID, and instance ID.
Right, and so what you have to do is you'd have to delete the node and then restart the kubelet with the right flags, right?
Yeah. Delete the node from the API server, but when you delete it, like you said, the pods are killed or they're considered gone.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure if it's like blocking for beta, but maybe if we document it, it might be fine.
No, I think this is a really good concern. Thanks for bringing it up.
We have regular procedures for draining the node and doing those kinds of things in Kubernetes, right? So it must be the same procedure that we can follow.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if anyone else ran into the issue and want to bring it up.
Now we have.
Yeah, I don't know if others have run into it, but I think this is very valid. Do you want to add an issue, Andrew?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. The other thing was, we talked about the SIGs. Is there anything else people wanted to bring up? One thing is, I know Anup who's on this call is looking to make the deprecation of external ID happen. Anup, do you have any?
Yeah, so actually last week I didn't get much chance to progress anything, but I replied to a few of the comments from Andrew, and I saw his comment that the external ID method and instance ID method regarding Amazon AWS cloud provider is returning different string pattern. I didn't get chance to look into it further, but basically right now the tests are passing, like the unit test and all. So I was curious. I'm not sure whether the returning of different pattern of the string is making any problem, because the whatever is consuming those external ID and instance ID are working even if we remove external ID.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say like what exactly is consuming it, and there could be third-party software that's consuming it as well. So it's really hard to judge like whether the change is okay or not.
Can you link the external ID issue in the chat?
Yeah.
Thank you.
60692, right, Anup?
Yeah, I just pasted it. So Andrew, you suggested someone from AWS SIG to review that, right?
Yeah, I think is it Nick Turner that's from AWS? Or?
Yeah, that's why I asked for the link. I'll take a look at it.
But yeah, regarding the code, I didn't get a chance to work on it last week. Also, I realized I haven't removed the external ID method from Google Cloud Platform. So this week probably I will do that and submit the new commit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Nick, do you want to give us a quick update on what's going on with Amazon CCM?
Sure. So I honestly haven't been able to work much on it. We're sort of in crunch time for EKS right now. So my update is I had a sort of mess around repo with 193. So I have an external cloud provider working with Kubernetes 193, but I haven't done any work to get 110 working at all. So it's on definitely something that I would like to get going on, but yeah, just too busy right now.
Okay. Do keep us updated as as progress happens.
Yeah, definitely will.
And Caleb, we can create a repository for it, or have you already created a repository for AWS?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. They all should be created.
Okay.
At least except for vSphere, because there's no one to own that.
Okay. And Nick, you have you already know where it is and you have access to it, right?
That I don't know where it is, and I'm not sure if I have access to it.
Okay, so you can get in touch with Caleb, and he can show you both. And I think you already have access to it. If you're in the owner's file, in the existing one, you'll have access to it in the new one, and Caleb will be able to show you where the repository is.
All right,
I'll follow a standard pattern. I think it's cloud-provider-
it's cloud provider AWS, but I don't see Nick. Let's put your GitHub handle. I don't see you in the owners, the top of owners for it.
All right, so I think SIG AWS. I'll talk to SIG AWS and see how we want to go about that.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, the time is up. If anyone wants to bring up something quickly,
I wanted to circle back onto this idea, and I dropped a link into chat and also into the working document for today. I'm first on the agenda next week to meet with SIG Docs to talk about how they're going to handle documentation generation for the external cloud providers.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can work up a minimum set of things that we expect all the providers to have, like for example, getting started guides for users, getting started guides for developers, parameters for documentation of all the parameters and how to configure. That would be helpful, so that I'm first on the agenda at SIG Docs next week to talk about this, and so it would be nice to have something concrete to walk into that meeting with. And they typically meet on Tuesday mornings.
Okay, so how can we help? Like, should we send you?
Yeah, I mean, if you can, maybe comment on that pull request for requirements. Just something that we can point SIG Docs to, so that they can start planning on, how to use their tooling to automatically generate these things for the Kubernetes Docs website.
Okay.
I guess the simplest thing, Chris, is a docs directory with a README and a bunch of MD files under it, and they can pull the README and put it as the main HTML page, and the rest of the MDs will be links off of the HTML page. So it'll work.
Right, but one of the things they do want is consistency across the experience, and setting a minimum standard of they don't want to generate documents that are out of date or aren't consistent, and so they would like to have something which is like a consistent user experience and a basic level of expectation, so that they can say that, okay, we're not going to generate documents for Foo Cloud, Foo provider, because they don't even tell you how to configure it, for example. So those are kind of the things they're looking for, and something that's consistent across all of those. But I want to be mindful of the time of the meeting, so please comment on the pull request with your ideas, and and I'll have something that I can go into that meeting with them next week.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I will add my comments. I encourage everyone else to actually also go look at it and participate. And I guess that sounds good to me, actually. That would be a good start. Anything else? Music. Okay. All right. So I think we can conclude the meeting now. Thank you all for joining us today. And Chris, I'll follow up on the documentation with you through the pull request. And see you all next week.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.